Hey guys, welcome back to Quad Down Pod. We have an amazing guest today that I'm super excited to introduce, even though you guys have met him before if you're a longtime listener of the show. I'm actually going to start off with my two other co-hosts, Flight of Taylor and KI Coaster Guy. How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm pretty good.
Fantastic.
Are you guys as excited for this guest as I am?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a great show.
Tonight on the show, we have the man who I accidentally implied was infamous last time, Ryan from Dorney Park. How are you doing, Ryan?
Infamous in some circles, but famous in some others. But I probably am just somewhere in the middle, just your normal everyday public relations guy.
Hey, public relations guys, on Twitter anyway, are royalty. So
Hey,
That's true.
depends on who you ask. My mom thinks I'm royalty too. That's probably where the list ends. So,
that's
but I'm glad you guys asked me to come back on, and we've had some hiccups getting on here. Been sick for a while, and appreciate you guys working around my schedule and making it happen. Love being on with you guys.
absolutely
Love
we
having
love talking to you. You are, as we've said, I think we actually said last episode, you are the what we consider the gold star in the industry for park public relations. So of course we're honored to have you on anytime you come on.
Absolutely.
Well,
Thank
I
you for coming on.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to see your faces again. Actually, Taylor, I saw you, I think, Halloween. So
Yeah. It was
pretty cool.
Fun time.
And yeah, I will just say, I know I get a lot of the praise too, but I have such a great park that really supports me and kind of lets me be who I am. And I think they're all pretty cool with the stories we tell and the voice that we have for the park. And so that's part of why I think I'm, doing as well as I am and as well as our department is. So it's cool.
That's awesome.
If you don't mind me asking, how long has your team at Dorney? I know you cycle through some interns sometimes, but like from
Yeah.
you up, how long have you been working with the people that you like work with on the daily?
So it depends. So I mean, this is actually I'm going into my third season, and I think actually I'm hitting my 2-year anniversary at the park, like
Ooh.
2 full calendar years. But in the in the park world, we measure it more by like season by season.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Sure.
yeah. So I'm going into my third season. So a lot of the people at the park level, when we have changes in the administrative building or in maintenance or operations like anybody else, but most of the folks that I've worked with, I have been there for the 2 seasons I've been there, and then I usually have a team underneath me. Well, I have the marketing department is me and my coworker Kristen. She's been with me from the gate. She's been with the park for 7 years. She's incredible, and her brain works completely differently than mine, which is good because I'm kind of like Captain Chaos. So it's good to have somebody who's more like trying to keep like, where is he going? Someone give him guardrails. And then I have 2 people underneath me. I don't know if you guys ever got the chance to meet Avery. She's our content coordinator, and she's been with me from the gate. Started as an intern, and then has kind of worked her way up a little bit, where we've been able to have some movement. And is the part-time content creator for us. So we usually collab. I like to video edit and do photography too. So you couldn't actually say, if you saw something on social media, you wouldn't know whose it was. And then even my interns over the last 2 years have done a good job of that. And we're going to have another new intern this year. Typically they work during the season though. So I think it's more like the consistency that I've created, and then kind of the environment that I have where I really allow them to create, and we collaborate really well, and they respect me. And so that's the team. The general manager, Jessica, and I have pretty much came in at the same time. I actually got hired by the previous GM, Mike, but Jess came in maybe two months after. And so we've always kind of had a good vibe. But once, yeah, it's a great team. Cool to be a part of. You got people that have been there for 40 years because it's Pennsylvania, right? And then you got people that came in 2 weeks ago. So it's a pretty dynamic environment.
That's cool.
Now that you mention it, do you know who Noah Khan is by chance?
Noah Khan. Name's familiar.
He's an artist that kind of up and rose this year. He was up for the Artist of the Year or the new Artist of the Year.
Okay, it's like pop culture.
Last week. Yeah. So he has a song called Homesick where he talks about how like everybody in New England is like they've been there forever and life is slow and like he doesn't have a reason to leave. And now that you mention it, that's kind of how like the Lehigh Valley down into Philly area really is, where it's like you have your family roots there, you just don't leave.
Yeah. And well, it's funny too because I moved around a lot for 10 or 11 years, doing different jobs, and I mean, I got homesick honestly after like 10 or 11 years. At some point too, I think you get a little older, you stop maybe career chasing as much, and you're kind of like quality of life chasing. maybe it's when you hit 30. I don't know. That's kind of when it happened for me. And I don't know. It's like, you know, if you still got parents that are alive, you know, I want to be near my mom. You know, we have a pretty tight connection. And my grandparents helped raise me a lot. You know, you see them getting sick. But yeah, man, I feel like Pennsylvania is definitely like that. We'll be like, Pennsylvania is the greatest state in the country. And you'll be here and you'll be like, I love it so much. And then you go to like Florida and you're like, all right, well, it might not be the most beautiful, but I still love it. Get flicked off on the highway and you're like, is it? Yeah, I kind of like getting flicked off right there. It made sure I still had a pulse, you know? Ohio's a lot like that too. Everybody I've ever met from Ohio, it's very, the same like gritty vibes. Like we're just gritty people, man. Put our noses down, but like everybody from Ohio loves Ohio for the most part. And everybody from Pennsylvania loves Pennsylvania for the most part. So I find that very, you know, interconnected for those two states.
Yeah. I often wonder if I'm going to end up in Pennsylvania down the line. Like you said, family stuff. My parents are up here in Buffalo. My sister lives down in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, right down 422. Yeah, like right between Hershey and you guys, basically. Yep. And I went to school down in Phoenixville. So I know that area very well. And my company that I work for is based out of Wilmington, Delaware. So a lot of people live in the Philly area and commute. And I love my company. I know I'm still young, but like you said, like you stop career chasing. Like I found a job that like treats me well. They're really good to me. I'm like, if I can stay in this company and grow, I'd be happy to move down there if I have to. So I often wonder, like, am I going to end up in that tri-state area?
Not a bad place to be, man.
It's something special down there.
Yeah, it's not a bad place to be. You know, the other thing I find too is I spend some time in some areas in the Midwest or in the South, and sometimes I just find that folks are a little more disingenuous. Like people in the Philadelphia area don't pull punches. They do not pull punches. Like you know exactly how everybody up here feels about you. Now it might take time. They may not say it to your face right away, but over time you'll find out how people really feel about you. And actually, I kind of find that to be endearing, even if it is or can be aggressive, right? So that's we see that at Dorney Park sometimes. You're like, all right, well, know how that person feels coming through the gate.
So are you from like the Philly area?
Yeah, so I went to college, Temple University. I grew up Chester, Delaware County, and then I even had spent some time when I was little in Wilmington, Delaware. So it's all one and the same. And then my mom, after I went off to college, moved out to Lancaster County, which is my wife's parents are out there. So that's kind of why we ended up coming back to the area, because her family's in this area and my family's in this area. And dude, I didn't even know. I honestly tell people this all the time. Like, I didn't know this was a real gig. Like, I just liked to go to amusement parks when I was a kid. I never really, people are like, oh, you never thought about working at one. And I'm like, I don't know. I never did. I don't know why. And I was big into sports. Right. I was like, wanted to do sports. And finally I was like, had a couple sports opportunities and really did not enjoy it. Because I felt like it took that like hobby aspect out. It sucked the hobby away from it, and it just made it work. And it's like when something you really love becomes like your number one work priority, for some reason, it just kind of like loses that magic. But with amusement parks, it's just kind of a different vibe, because it wasn't like my number one hobby. I've always loved them. But then I got this job and I was like, okay, maybe you don't have to, this job too, right? Not my job specifically. Like I can still kind of be like the outside, pull everybody together, objectivity, create. And so I was like, oh, okay, maybe it doesn't have to kill your hobby. It's kind of like the perfect job. But I had no idea this was a real gig.
Sure.
Not at all.
I didn't either until a couple years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's awesome because I do so much more than, like social media is such a small, piece of what we do, or even like the tours or the on-camera television interview stuff. This kind of stuff is such a small portion of what I do, because then there's also like the internal communications and hiring messaging and looking at respective numbers, how we're doing there, meeting with each department, what are their needs. And then, I've actually worked really closely on this construction project, which I did not know was a real thing. But depending on the day or where we're at, I might be, and I don't know if it's supposed to be this way, but I might be the point of contact for someone on the site or for security. And I'm like, holy moly, I didn't know I was going to be like, third in line to be getting calls on this thing. So the job does entail a lot of stuff, but it's every day is exciting. So even in February, we're not even open, and I'm still like cruising. We have so much stuff going on.
Are you? I assume the answer is yes, but are you like sufficiently into the preparing for opening day marketing stuff at this point?
Yeah, we're I don't know. We're way past preparation at this point. We're to the point where like we have everything lined up. We know what we need. We might have a couple things that need to fall. So like an idea of that is um, we're still maybe a couple weeks away, and I'm speaking generically. It might happen next week, honestly, but we're still a couple weeks away from really identifying when the construction will like 100% be completed, because there's some logistics that still go into some of these things, or you might run into an issue, right? So I think like that's one of those things where I know what I want, and I've cleared it with everybody that needs to have it cleared with. Everybody's in agreement. We know how to execute it. We have the dollars set aside. We have the pieces that we need to make it happen. But when it physically is going to happen, still a little bit of a moving target. So we've got potentially a couple events scheduled all around that opening day window. And as you guys know, that would be like the pass holder preview, which was the folks who purchased their gold pass before September 4th will have like special access to the ride. So it's like, when does that happen? We want to do some potential public preview days if we get to it, like if we have time and we can get it open a little bit earlier. But like the May 10th is a drop dead, so I know that one's good to go, right? So it's like you got to work on press release, media messaging, social media messaging, emails to pass holders, all that kind of. We've got to work on all those different things, marketing aspect of it. Where do we have signage? We've got some billboards that we're placing this year in different positions with the ride. So there's just a lot of, and then I don't do this. This is Kristen, but every once in a while it comes across my desk or I just get asked about it. But like we have to do in-park signage too. So there's a lot of unique little things. I'm also helping with like tours for engineers and contractors that are not like, we're never going to get credit for that. But it's, it's just it's good practice, right? So it's like, I make sure that they get what they need, that they can get in, review the project. If they have to fly a drone over their, they want to show their work, we're doing that with them too. So a lot that goes into it, but yeah, I think we'll get a really clear picture of what, April and May are going to look like here real soon. So I'm hoping by the end of the month, because that gives me a nice runway to let people know. I think one of the mistakes that the industry was having right around the time of COVID is like promising dates when the market is volatile, like giving people an expectation of like when they could ride this thing, when you have no control. Like the park has no control over it at this point. This is B&M and our contractors. It's pretty much out of our control. And the only thing we could do is, because money talks, it's like maybe you can expedite the process by adding dollars to it to, either get another crew in or add a contractor that could work on XYZ. Like there's no other way though. I mean, you kind of set a timeline, you hope you can hit it. And then we've been blessed this year too. I think one of the biggest things when you're building out a project like this is weather, inclement weather, right? So we just have not, we only had 1 week of snow impact. And at that point, we were pretty much invested in the station, which was great because when you talk about mobilizing that larger crane, it's a challenge when you have snow and ice. But we were at a point where we were discussing it at that point in time. Do we move forward with the tilted loop or do we do the station? Well, we could see the forecast. And we're like, let's move forward with the station and hammer that out. Because that's actually you look at it as like, what's the challenging builds? It's the station, the lift hill, the Immelman, and then when I say the station, I mean the track elements of the station. And now it's like the physical building of the station, because everything else after the Immelman is what I'm told. I don't know. I've never done it, but it's pretty easy. And I've been told that we could get up as many as 7 pieces a day from this point. We had the tilted loop done. I don't know. I want to say a week and a half ago, which means we're like well over 65% completed. But apparently the last half is the easier half. So,
do you know how many track pieces total it has? I think it's Banshee at Kings Island has 100 pieces on the dot.
Yeah, don't 100% quote me on this, but my memory recall says 68 pieces total track.
Couldn't add one
more.
And
the number of the truckload shipments when I originally had a discussion with Claremont, which is out of Ohio, shout out Cincinnati, was about 62 truckloads total, I believe, and some of that was with like columns
Jeez.
and storage containers. So quite a.
Well, I saw my tweet. My buddy saw two
I know
pieces of Iron
that was pretty
Menace
cool.
on the
I appreciate
highway.
you guys sharing that.
He's actually he's down in Cumberland, Maryland, so about an hour south of
In the Gap.
Altoona.
Yep.
And I'm like, you got to go out to Dorney. He's like, I've just
Mm-hmm.
never been. He's been to Hershey. I'm like, just drive the extra hour. Like Dorney is so different that like you're getting a different vibe. It's a different charm. You got to make it out there. And he said Iron Menace is probably the ride that's gonna tip him over the edge.
Well, that's what we're hoping, right?
Yeah.
It's so funny to me too that I see it on X and Facebook and Instagram, but it's like there's such a like a desire to compare apples to oranges. Like comparing Dorney Park to Hershey Park to me is like not not doing Hershey Park any favors. I mean, I love Hershey Park and what they offer, but that's like an IP heavy park.
Yes.
That,
I
it's
say
all about candy. Like it's a layup, and they have great hardware and they have great people. It's a beautiful park, but it's the same thing with like comparing Knoebels to Dorney. I see that too all the time. It's like we don't even have the same business model. Like the business model is the same. So to me, it's just like, why can't you all just enjoy the three great parks you have in such a close area? Like a lot of us grew up within those three parks, and you could even add Great Adventure to that. A lot of Ferraris on that lot, but you got 4 great parks within an hour to an hour and a half, depending on where you are in the southeastern Pennsylvania, which I think is even in New Jersey, you can get to a lot of those pretty quickly.
Yeah, and now you have American Dream Mall. If you want to drive up to East Rutherford, that area is booming right now.
Yeah.
It's great.
Have you been there?
I mean, I get that there's competition, but I don't know. I think the competition's more in the group sales world than anything else. I mean, I think general admission kind of stays where it is, especially post-pandemic. I think everybody's kind of settled out where they'll be. Now we're trying to get people to come back, obviously, but I would say the people that are coming back, it's not because they were going to another amusement park. It's because they've just stepped away from amusement parks, which we saw pretty industry-wide during COVID-19. So it's like getting people to come back out to the park, and how do you energize them to do that? We've tried some stuff the last 2 or 3 years, but I think the understanding is like you've got to invest in the park. You need like a capital home run at some point to get people to come back in to realize, I think it's the same thing we talked about earlier, Josh, where it's like you want people to come back in and be like, dude, this is like coming home. I always say that Dorney Park's like going to grandma's house, where it's like, it's like she's got the same old couch, right? Thunderhawk, 100 years old. But it's like, but I love that couch. And I love that when I come in, like everything reminds me of all those memories I made as a kid at grandma's house. Like, yeah, it's like we still have the Whip and Thunderhawk and Zephyr and all that stuff. I think it's cool. But it's like now we bought, grandma a new recliner. And
a new recliner.
I look a little different in there, but a hell of a nice recliner. So
that I'm glad you said that. It actually reminds me of something I was thinking about when I was putting together the stuff I kind of want to talk about. Obviously, you have a 100th anniversary of a coaster coming up. Is that something that you guys as a park, like in the marketing department, are like, okay, we need to focus on this history, let's do something about that? Or like, how do you guys approach those kind of historic events? Because your park has a lot of history to it, obviously.
Yeah. So we have talked about this. So I think our merchandise director, our general manager, and myself have kind of taken the lead on this. My opinion of it was, when we sat down and had the first conversation about, like, we have a whole committee set up for this. So like, yeah, we understand it. 100 years as a roller coaster at Dorney Park is a big deal, right?
Yeah.
So during this first meeting of this committee, one of the things that was stressed, and even some of the folks who were higher up than me at Cedar Fair kind of, I think, agree with my position, and maybe that's even who I got it from. But one of the things that we stressed is that we want Iron Menace to own the start of the season, because it deserves a massive runway. This is the largest investment for the park, period, ever. It's more than Steel Force, and a lot of that is going to be because of some of the other dynamic elements that come with it, and some of the changes that are made to the area around it. So that's the biggest thing. After that, what I want to do, and what I think we're all in agreement on, is that we hit that June-July window, somewhere in there. And we're working on some stuff too. I'm not going to get into it because we're not locked in yet. That's one of those where it's like we're getting the first 5 or 6 things locked in, which basically takes us up to June 1st. And then we've started some of these initial conversations about what does it look like to kind of do a Thunderhawk celebration. So we're working on something. The other thing is like there will be a line of merch for the 100th. There will be signage changes. We're working on some kind of dynamic signage too to guide people through the history of the coaster. We've had some good conversations with Philly Toboggan about maybe some assets they have that they can help us utilize this year or allow us to utilize this year. Tom and Janine are great. So we're working on all that stuff. I think the challenge is with as small as the team is, and with a major investment like Iron Menace, I think for me too, it's just like, hey, let's get through the opening of Iron Menace, and then we'll just stack all the cards on the deck, and we'll figure out how to do this right for Thunderhawk. Because the last thing I want to do too is something that's half-butted. Like that, it deserves. And I also want to give it its own space. Like it's totally forgettable and it's too much. It's like system overload. If I try to throw that in there with Iron Menace and all the new theming and new events, and it's like people are gonna be like, "What?" It's gonna get lost. And I just think that's kind of ridiculous.
Right.
It's 100 years old.
Maybe it gets overshadowed by the new.
It deserves its flowers. So we're gonna make sure it gets them.
Taylor, while we're talking about Thunderhawk, I want to give you a chance to sing its praises because I know you love Thunderhawk.
I adore Thunderhawk. I don't know what it is about Thunderhawk, but everything about it, I love it. If Mystic Timbers wasn't at my home park, Thunderhawk probably would be my number 1 Woody.
How about that? Wow, that's a strong endorsement.
That is strong. Okay, but let's hear what my other Woodies are. Is Mystic, Beast, Sea Dragon, and Comet. Like those are and Blue Streak.
Yeah.
Oother.
I just realized Pennsylvania has a really good collection of vintage Woodies. Between Knoebels, Hershey, and you guys, you have some really good old style wooden coasters over there.
Oh yeah, man. Comet's got some history there. So
I got new trains this year too.
PA in general,
they're gorgeous.
A lot of the things. I mean, Kennywood, Dorney.
Oh, Kennywood. Yeah, I forgot about
Park,
Kennywood.
Knoebels. There is so much rich amusement park history in PA.
Yeah.
You got Dutch Wonderland. Never been there, but I know it exists.
Hey, Dutch Wonderland. My kids love Dutch Wonderland, man. You can find us there a couple times this summer. So.
My sister told me I took her to Cedar Point a couple years ago, and she grayed out on Gatekeeper. So she's starting to get to that point where like she gets a little bit, woozy, but she's like, man, come down here. I'll take you to Dutch Wonderland. I'll ride everything with you.
Yeah. You gotta be careful with King's Dominion. Then you've got people graying out on that.
Me and Larry actually just went down there during Haunt, and my fiance Kyla, bless her heart, she grayed out on I-305 twice.
Yeah,
and the third time we rode it, she blacked out, and she woke up. Have you ever ridden I-305?
Yes. Yeah.
So after the first turn,
constant thing, graying out.
Yeah. After the first turn, obviously that's the big gray out / blackout.
Yep.
You're going up that hill. She wakes up and just goes, "What the fuck?" and then passes out again because she didn't know where she was.
Man, you love to hear it.
She never swears on roller coasters, but in that moment, she had no idea where she was. She's going 90 miles an hour. She has no blood in her head, and I'm like.
I kind of want that to happen to me on I-305. Sounds like an interesting experience.
I know.
That sounds terrifying.
I've not grayed out, but it does sound. Honestly, it kind of sounds like fun.
I got a little gray, like around the edge of my vision, but that's the closest I've ever got to like an actual gray out.
Right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned some enhanced theming for Iron Menace. Is that like Station Q theming or like what does that entail? I don't think you guys have. Obviously, you've been teasing a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think with this, so the station, as you know, is essentially a 100-year-old abandoned steel mill. So
yes.
I don't know if you guys have ever been inside 100-year-old steel mill, because I have to film our entire teaser campaign. First of all, it's freaking creepy.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Second of all, there's not a whole lot in there. Now, even in, we did a lot of research at Bethlehem Steel specifically because it's right out our backyard. But I did a couple others in the Berks County area, some of the other regions, Chester County. So one of the other things that you'll notice when you go through one of those mills is that there are still like relics or things still positioned as though like someone just picked up and left immediately. Because from what I've understood from some of the historians we've talked to, and in some cases, like the guys left thinking they would come back because there's some kind of layoff situation. The 90s were not kind to the steel industry. So they would just leave some of their belongings or their equipment set up like they were going to come back the next day. And then, there would be some kind of mass layoff. It just continued or they never brought them back. So I think you'll kind of get those vibes where you're kind of going through and it's an older mill. And there'll be kind of like some of those relics like equipment hanging on the wall. And so, I don't want to get people to get the sense that it's going to be like some massive. I mean, it is really well themed, but it's an old abandoned steel yard. And so that's the other part of the concept is pulling that out further from just maybe the station or the ride itself into that area, which used to be Possessed Plaza, and extending it all the way to where the Dorney Grill was, because that's getting an overhaul, which is all part of this. Doing it all the way out to there and then back too. So you have Ghost of the Machine back there, which is already themed. It's supposed to be the administrative building. And then you have Cedar Creek Flyers, which is also getting a refresh. So a lot of those elements are just going to be pumped all the way through there. And we have a pretty cool partnership that we have finally, I think we've gotten into an actual agreement that we're working on too, which when that all comes around, we'll share the details on that. You guys know I love doing that on social. So as soon as that's locked up, I think that even gives us a greater ability to theme. And I think that's another thing for me. I've always been really big on how do we connect this back to the community. And this is something that's going to allow us to do that. Not just what we're able to do from a theming standpoint, but some of the partners that we can bring in to make it even greater. So I'm really excited to see that. So you're going to see like things that look like old steel facilities. If you go through like an old, steel yard, you'll see like little buildings and alcoves and all that kind of stuff. Equipment laying around outside, inside. So that's just kind of the vibe. We want people to feel like they're walking up on an old steel yard. So whether that's Bethlehem Steel or whether it's somewhere out in Pittsburgh, it's going to have the same vibe.
The way you describe that reminds me of a Reddit post that I read. It's going to tie in, I promise. So where I went to college, if you're familiar with where University of Valley Forge is, right on the border of Phoenixville and Schuylkill Township, it used to be the Valley Forge General Hospital back in like World War II. And there's a network of tunnels under the campus that's been locked off, but people occasionally like go in there. And I found this Reddit post of somebody who claims to have gone down there in the 90s. And I worked in IT, so I was allowed to occasionally go in some of the tunnels. So I can kind of corroborate some of the things they said. But the stuff that they said that I couldn't corroborate was like, it seems like when the military sold the land, they just up and abandoned it. So there's like operating rooms down there and like military jeeps that were just abandoned. Like you said, they just walked out. They thought they might come back. They just never did. And that creepy vibe is exactly what I think of when you say like,
I want to go down there.
I really want to go down there.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
And it should, honestly, just like a steel yard, it'll be more creepy at night. Go ahead, Taylor. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I know the last time you were on, you talked about like wanting to expand the Cedar Fair cinematic universe. I was wondering if you can say if you guys are planning on throwing in some nods or anything. Like I know like Mystic Timbers has some.
Yeah, so we might actually find that out. So Ken Parks, I actually featured him on a Menacing Minute, is kind of like the brainchild behind the MCU, the CCU, I guess.
The FSCU, actually.
Yeah. So he's actually coming up, I think, or someone from his team. It might even be Clayton. I think are coming up sometime around the Valentine's Day window because of this partnership that we're entering in. And I think we're going to get a better idea of kind of how they want to place things and exactly what is getting placed now that we're kind of in a position with construction where we can start to do those kinds of things. So yeah, I would anticipate with Ken's involvement, there'll be some stuff. I'm not 100% sure what I've seen. The other thing is too is like when we get same thing with the roller coasters. Like when we get some of these initials, um, things change. But also we normally get like here's the second idea I had, and here's the third idea I had, and we could do this one if this. We could do this one if this, and if this happens, then we could do this. So I know there were some nods in all three of those, but then again, execution is always different. I mean, you start off with a plan initially, and then man, it could depart big time, especially when you talk about theming, right? So yeah, I think so. That's a good question. I should know more here really soon, so it's exciting.
So
I always love looking out
speaking
for
of,
those.
oh, sorry guys.
No, that was it. I just wanted to say I love looking for them.
Yeah. Speaking of partnerships, you guys, the Six Flags and Cedar Fair.
Oh man,
what's that been like so far for you guys? For someone in your job?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we got that initial burst of information, which honestly is probably nothing that you guys haven't dug up at this point or have seen. Really, since they went into kind of this regulatory process and are awaiting final approval, we haven't really heard a whole lot. And I would say that goes for some of my companions at the corporate office in Charlotte. So I think part of the reason that happens is because, you're not, and I'm no lawyer by any sense, and I don't really understand, business economics and those kinds of things. But from what I understand, really can't make any plans until it's finalized. I mean, I'm sure someone's
that makes
having
sense.
a conversation somewhere, but like you can't communicate it out. I don't think you can really write it anywhere or plan it out until it becomes final and approved. So
that makes so much sense.
Everything I've ever heard, and like I said, I read stuff just like you guys on this thing. I think everybody's kind of hopeful that can be concluded soon, and plans can kind of be made, and we'll kind of see where everything goes. But I haven't really gotten any great idea of it, and honestly, I don't even want to know at this point because I have enough to worry about to not worry about that. And right now, my number one concern is Iron Menace getting this ride open and getting people out here to enjoy it. And my second thing after that will be Thunderhawk. So, and then after that, maybe we'll worry about. I wouldn't anticipate anything before. I don't know. I've always heard August. Now I can't even tell you where I've heard that from because I honestly don't remember. But I could have just read it on Twitter, honestly. But I've always kind of gotten the sense that nothing was really going to be communicated or talked about until August. Maybe part of that too is like usually when we make our announcements as a company, they happen in August. So I would think like if you got approval before that, we might even hold the cards anyway until they kind of had an understanding of how they wanted to move forward, and then maybe you would dump that in a release about the third quarter or something like that. So we'll see what happens.
Well, we know that I don't even know if you know this because the news kind of broke earlier this week, but it went headlines today. The shareholder meeting is March 12th, so it could get beat up.
I didn't want to mention that. I did know that one. I held that one.
Yes.
But, I'm not sure 100% if I'm assuming if that goes through, then I don't know. I always kind of heard April too would be like if we get final approval, it would happen around April, and that's what I said. Maybe then at that point, we go out July or August with what a plan is.
Yeah.
But I don't know. People always ask me, like, is my pass going to be good for 2024? And I'm like, I don't know. Just don't bet on it. And if it happens and you get it towards the end of the season, just be like, hey, that's sweet. I would expect more of that kind of stuff in 2025, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
For
sure.
It's just a lot. There's a lot of moving parts right now. So it just makes it tricky.
Makes sense.
Going back to November, do you like wake up one morning and you're like, oh, I might be working for Six Flags soon? Or like, do you get pulled in a meeting before? How did you find out about this?
We got. I think the first. I mean, I may have heard from it from someone at the corporate office first because I'm sure they're all way more locked in than I am. But we did get an email from I believe it was the CEO Richard Zimmerman that kind of explained the situation and why the company felt that it was a good move and put us in a strong position and. Certainly, I don't disagree with that. I mean, so many great assets in Six Flags, and I think that our team in Charlotte is unbelievably talented, and I think that they've been good for the industry in general, Cedar Fair. So I love the idea of them getting a chance to kind of get their claws on some more parks and improving them in ways that we've seen. And I feel really good about where we're at. I mean, I think they didn't lay anybody off during the pandemic, which I think says a heck of a lot about the company.
It does.
And
Yeah.
reposition themselves over that 3-year window or so to like still be in a position to reinvest in the parks. And I mean, huge investment for Dorney, which I think says a lot about them too. They're also thinking about, which is different shift. And there's some people that are responsible for that once again in Charlotte, but dynamically thinking about like, we've got to reinvest in these Valley Fairs and Worlds of Funds and Dorney Parks,
Yeah.
and we got to make sure that those guys are we're in great markets, all of us, Kansas City, Minneapolis, and Philadelphia. I mean, it doesn't, and honestly, I think if you only look at Philadelphia as a county, which I guess that is what it is, but we get more visitors from New York City than we do Philadelphia. So
really,
yeah. So that always creates like an interesting dynamic too. Like we're in such a weird spot. Like where do you market? Where do you spend that money? I'm a firm believer of you spend where people are coming from, and if they're coming from both, you got to spend money in both. Yeah. You just got to be strategic about it. So
interesting.
Yeah.
I genuinely would not have guessed that.
I didn't either when I came in. It's actually something I kind of learned over the course of my first season. Locally, and we do great locally the entire season. So Lehigh Valley supports the heck out of Dorney Park, which we appreciate, and I love the community that we have. But then seeing the numbers, and you're seeing New York, and you're like, holy moly. I think there's some reasons for that, though. I think a lot of people in Philly, when they think of vacation, they think of going to the beach. And a lot of people in New York, when they think of going on vacation, they think of like going to the mountains or going to Poconos or like retreating from.
Okay.
Or getting away from the city. Yeah.
So, and you got to think too, it's way more people. So even if like a very small percentage of them has identified like the Lehigh Valley as like a great place to go, just like get away from it all. I mean, it's by default. It's just so many people. So
yeah,
I guess it makes sense because they either have to go upstate. Or they're not going to Jersey because nobody in New York likes Jersey. So that basically leaves the Pocono, Lehigh region or upstate. And upstate, has a stigma in New York City. Obviously, I'm from Western New York, but they consider us upstate. And we're like second-class citizens to them.
So is upstate just anywhere that's not New York City?
Anywhere above Long Island, they consider upstate, yes. And meanwhile, we have like... everywhere else, we have Western New York, we have the Southern Tier, we have Central New York, we have the Catskill region, we have the Capital region, and they're like, it's upstate.
Cool. Okay,
man. To go back to your Valley Fair, Dorney investment, obviously Cedar Fair's investing in the smaller parks. I think a natural thing a lot of people have been doing post-merger news is asking, well, what parks are they going to close? And people are like, well, Dorney is so close to Great Adventure. And I'm like, they're not going to build a $25 million B&M and then close the park a year later after investing in the water park so aggressively for the last decade. And now they're showing love to the dry park and they're just going to abandon all that because they have Great Adventure 2.5 hours. Like that doesn't make any business sense.
Why didn't they close Kings Island when they bought, Cedar Fair?
Especially with New York is the most populated city in America. Philadelphia is the 5th most populated city in America. And that whole East Coast region is just so densely packed. Why would you... I can't wrap my head around people that were saying like Dorney's on the chopping block.
I feel like those people overlook the charm too.
No. They do.
Homey.
I think those people don't understand the market.
Yeah,
that's probably. I think
so. Like if you are thinking of it competitively, it's really all about like everybody's trying to keep up with Hershey, straight up. Because they're doing a great job. I mean, whether you like the park or you don't, if you go there on maybe not a weekend, but going on a weekend in July, any theme park is going to be a crapshoot, right? But like, I mean, if you go there on a Tuesday, Wednesday in the summertime, you're probably going to have a good time. But they said it. There's such a strong IP that it makes it really hard for everybody else to compete. So the way I see it, this is just me. This has nothing to do with like I've never talked to anybody at Cedar Fair about this, but to me, the way that I see it, and obviously I'm going to speak positively for Dorney Park. I wouldn't see them dismantling the park anyway. I don't think that's a real thing. If somebody wanted to have a discussion about selling off assets, I mean, I don't know. But once again, you're just making a massive investment, so it doesn't really add up. Plus, I know some of the people in charge, and I know how they feel about Dorney, and a lot of them started their careers at Dorney, so like also don't think it's the thing. I think what it does is you're going to have these two great parks within an hour and 10, hour and 15 minutes of each other in literally New York City and Philadelphia shadow. So like once again, I can go back to a comment I made a couple minutes ago where it's like the big area where there's a lot of competition is groups and group sales. So when you're trying to get the field trips in there and the big companies that come and like rent the park out for the day, all those kinds of things. Now you could sell off an experience where it's like you get two parks over the course of the summer, or you could say, oh, okay, well I'm already involved in a discussion with company X, Y, or Z, and they're saying like, we thought about, I don't want to call out Great Adventure, but we talked about this park, right? And because that's not really the analogy, but it's just like we talked about this park. It doesn't really fit our needs. Well, here's another one. It's an hour and 10 minutes away, and it offers this, this, and this, right? So now you have the potential to really, chop it up, and then you'll have some of these like related synergies. Also, I think it's like Taylor said, like our park has this really unique historic charm, whereas Great Adventures like Ferraris, right? So they're two very different experiences in my opinion, which I think plays well, because if they were both the same, then I don't know if it well, but I think it has potential to work really well. Not to mention the other kind of battleground is season passes, right? So
I was gonna say, it seems like a good way to upsell.
Boom, right? If you can say, oh, I could go to Great Adventure today instead of going to Dorney Park because I want to change it up, right? Or it's like even it's like you could even say like I'm trying to think of all. It's like I want to go to Six Flags St. Louis instead of going to Worlds of Fun today, but you live in the middle of Missouri. Like now you can do that. So I think all of that is. I think a lot of that plays into it.
I thought about that a lot when pre-COVID, a lot of people would go to Six Flags Darien Lake from across the border in Canada. Yep. But post-COVID, it seems like they're all heading north up to Canada's Wonderland. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I thought of when this merger was announced was like, if they have a joint season pass, that's going to like redistribute that, which I think is going to be good for both parks, because Darien Lake has a lot of potential, but it needs the attendance to get investments from a corporate end. And Canada's Wonderland is packed. I'm sure it's the busiest seasonal park in North America. It's to the brim every time I'm there. And if you even if it's like 5% of daily attendance leaves that park and crosses the border for Darien Lake, that's going to do wondrous things, no pun intended, wondrous things for Wonderland, just in like reducing lines and increasing perceived capacity and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things, but I think, I haven't talked to them about their plan with this, but I know that they have a 10-year plan for Dorney that we've all, I think, our team had some say in, or has some say in at least. I'm sure Jessica does, our general manager, what that looks like. And Jason McClure is on a corporate level too, and he used to be the GM at Dorney. So that's why I feel really confident that not only is there a plan, I know there's a plan, but I feel really confident in the direction that they're setting Dorney, and I think that they think very highly of the park. So I think that's all good for us.
Absolutely.
That's what I like to hear.
Me too.
Looks like we have some questions from viewers, mostly for you. And then I have a quick little game to play just to have some fun, and then we'll wrap this up here. I like where we left this. It's always leave on a high note for Dorney.
Thank you.
So it looks like Dawson, Taylor's lovely partner, wants to know, if you could only ride one ride at Dorney for an entire season, what would it be?
If I could, Talon. I know. You guys probably figured that out anyway from
Talon at Dorney Park.
It's so funny that Jen. So part of the reason that Jen has kind of like elevated this like Dorney Park lore is because like I also love Talon like a stupid amount and talk about it at the park, and I have pictures of it in my office. So I just think it's like the perfect invert. So it's when I if I had to get stuck on something. Also, I rode Talon with James McAvoy, so even more elite status.
Really?
Yeah, so
that's super cool.
We went to go put him on the ride when he came out here, and we had kind of like a, it's like an entourage for him just to make sure that he was getting what he needed, and we'd pop in throughout the day and leave him alone every once in a while. But especially in the water park. It's like nobody wants to be bothered with us. And kind of once we noticed that like, people weren't recognizing me, you know, I had like a big full beard and a hat on. We were like, he's probably all right. But he was just kind of would get on roller coasters, and he was getting on Talon, and I was just kind of standing on the other end of the platform because I was with him at this point. And he's like, well, I mean, you know, he has a great accent too. He's like, well, I mean, like you might as well get on with me at this point. And I was like, oh, you want me to ride with you? He's like, yeah, I don't want to be in the first row by myself. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, talk about a stupid job, right?
The cool things you get to do.
I know. You can put me on Talon all day. I love that ride, man. So smooth, quiet. Like, I love everything about it.
Have you tried to get Jason Kelsey and his wife out for Iron Menace opening event?
Oh yeah, we've tried, man. We're working on it. We've got some fires in the oven. We're trying. I think everything got a little more complicated with his life because, first of all, New Heights exploded when.
Yes.
I mean, it was already exploded anyway, but I think it exploded further when Travis started dating Taylor. Not our Taylor, but Taylor Swift, right?
Not our Taylor.
They are. You know, they're reaching a level of celebrity that I don't think any of us could have envisioned. And then I think another challenge too is he has talked a lot about retirement. So, you know, if you're trying to work with the Eagles organization or anybody that's connected to them, they're also kind of like, well, we gotta see what's going on before we make any commitments with him.
That's fair.
Yeah, he's had a great career. We love Jason Kelsey.
Ryan just reminded me. Sorry. Ryan just reminded me I'm repping my Eras Tour merch right now.
Are you really?
Yeah, got my Eras shirt.
Ryan just reminded me that when I saw him enter the call, I put on my
he literally went and put that jersey on.
But hey, Jason just implied that he's going to play in Brazil week 1 next year. So maybe
I know. I saw Travis. Somebody asked Travis about it too, and they're like, "I think he's going to play." And I'm like, "I mean, this is great. This is great news. The best center in history of the league." So.
I agree. I actually feel bad for Travis right now, though, because he's in his Super Bowl press junket, and people are like, "Are you gonna give Taylor a ring after the game?" And he's like,
oh, yeah.
"I'm just worried about this ring, man." Like,
yeah.
I kind of feel bad for him.
I saw the one answer he said was basically like, "Hey, she delivered on the Grammy. Now I got to bring home the hardware or something." And I was like, "This is just now, man. He's probably so focused on the game." I love when like Entertainment Tonight will be like, "And Travis wasn't there." It's like, dude, it's because he has a game. 1,400 miles away tomorrow at 1 p.m. Like, what do you want him to do? It's like they don't understand football. They're like, Travis, this random nobody she's dating from Kentucky. It's like, what the hell? It's like he's
Travis Kelsey with
in the history of the league.
Travis Kelsey with a minuscule net worth of $30 million gets lucky by dating billionaire Taylor Swift.
And all respect to Taylor Swift, certainly more of a star than Travis Kelsey ever was, but he's also not like some random dude from Ohio.
Yeah, like he 100%.
He actually is somebody. Yeah. It's always funny when they say, it's like, he's not going to come to the Grammys. I'm like, I mean, he's got to play in the Super Bowl in like 4 days.
Yeah, he has mandatory practice before the Super Bowl, one of the most televised events in the world.
I think that was actually I think the Grammys were like the same day they were doing like one of their larger, because they do all these press junkets. And, you know, like one of the larger things they had to do was like go in there with the opposing quarterback and like another star player and like do a Q&A with like, you know, Tony Romo or something. It's like, geez.
You just described Travis Kelsey, Tony Romo, and Brock Purdy in a room, and that's a funny mental image to me.
Yeah, they were. They were all in like an arena.
That's really funny.
Wow.
That's hilarious. Taylor, did you have something to say?
I did, but I lost it. That's okay. That's normal for me. Like
that's quite common.
Yeah. No,
she was just thinking about eras there, and
hey,
clearly they should have moved the Grammys to wherever they were having their press junket.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Why aren't the Grammys in Vegas?
Oh yeah. Move the Grammys to Vegas.
Make it happen.
Not a problem.
Yeah,
not a problem.
Taylor's
I'm sure they'll
in Tokyo,
celebrate together when they
Cruz
can.
Going to Tokyo next year. I saw a great Facebook comment today that was like, it was like, why didn't Taylor thank Travis? And somebody's like, I'm sure he got thanked in private. Let them have a private life. That's it.
Yeah,
like,
not a big deal. Could you imagine if your relationship was under that much scrutiny and be like, this guy's an absolute piece of crap.
No.
Look at this guy.
No, that would be awful. I think that's why so many of those people get divorced or break up.
Probably.
Yeah.
Look at him getting coffee by himself. What is he? Didn't get anything for her. It's a Monday afternoon, all right?
Unfortunate.
Last thing I have to say about this question before we move on to the next one is your love for Talon is funny to me because my favorite interaction I've ever had on Twitter is I tweeted at Dorney Park, nomination to call the 0G role on Talon the daddy role, and you said, don't need to nominate it if you're already calling it that. that was peak interaction. I'm like, I can't get any better than that. That's pretty funny.
I don't know who started the whole daddy force thing too, but I love it. I love it. That's hilarious. Go on, Steel Force.
Was it not Jen?
I don't know if it was Jen or Chris.
Oh.
I think it might have been Chris that started calling it Daddy Force just to mess with Jen because, the whole... Even though he loves Possessed more than any other ride at our park, which is hilarious.
He does.
Yeah.
I think I would really like Possessed a lot.
Possessed is a great ride. You cannot go on it if you haven't eaten for like 12 hours. That was my only thing. That's my only caveat. I hadn't eaten in I no joke, 12 hours. I was doing media, and the one reporter's like, oh, I want to get on a roller coaster. And I'm thinking, well, what's a roller coaster where we will see her the entire time? Possessed, because it's like the guy standing on the platform. You get it going out. And if you have a second shooter, it's like up. It's like the easiest thing.
Uh-huh.
And we were getting on there. I think it was 8 a.m. or something. I had a long day the day before, too. And I was like, dude, I am going to puke. And the next time I got on it, though, I was like, this is a great ride. But I hated it for 3 minutes.
Yeah, it does make a difference.
Oh yeah, I mean I don't know if you want to get in there right after you ate, but there's a happy medium in there somewhere.
Yeah, that's why I didn't ride Possessed until Haunt, because I don't know if you remember the day that Jen and Coaster Studios and me and Bryant from Coaster 365, everyone was at Dorney that day, and it was 95 degrees. And I was in the middle of a road trip, so I hadn't eaten in 6 hours. I'm I have no fluids, no food. It's 95 degrees. I am not riding anything intense right now because I will die.
Yeah.
No, that won't do it.
That day was hot.
That's a water park day right there.
If I remember, we pulled up to the parking lot, and I was like, everything's going to be packed. Everything was walk-on. Because everybody at Dorney was over at the water park that day, which, I mean, it makes total sense.
Yeah, if you look at our numbers, it's Wild Water Kingdom carries the attendance load from June through August. It's way more than you think. If you want to come and get on a couple rides, I don't know, come at 1 o'clock on a Friday afternoon when it's 90 plus degrees, and I guarantee you'll get right on everything. Maybe not Iron Menace this year, but everything else you probably get right on. Actually, you might more so this year because a lot of people just want to get on Menace after they leave the water park.
Yep.
So. Ooh, one more question. I don't think this has been announced yet, so feel free to shoot me down.
Sure.
Iron Menace. Yes. Standby fast lane single rider? Any of those?
I just actually was looking at the single fast lane machines that we got for this year. Got quite a few because I think that's kind of like a company-wide move we're making. I believe there will be one at Iron Menace. So there is a fast lane as well, but I believe there will be single. So I'm not 100% on that because once again, conversations shift a little bit. When I was looking at the machines the other day, that was the impression I got. So
very cool.
It's more of an IT thing than actually, believe it or not. So
I applied at Cedar Fair IT once, specifically at Cedar Point.
Did you?
Never heard back. I did. I got past the HR screening, but IT never reached out to me. But I got a lovely job that I mentioned earlier, so it all worked out.
That's kind of like a really close community. A lot of those guys will know other people, and they usually like to bring in people they already know. So
that makes sense.
I don't know about Cedar Point, but our team is small for that.
I was talking to.
Yeah. You'd think,
I was talking to somebody that worked there, and he's like, yeah, their Cedar Point's IT, no shade, is archaic, and it's a small team of guys that never change anything.
No, I'm sure they're great.
I mean, I'm sure they are, and I wouldn't have applied there if I wouldn't have loved to work there.
See?
But that's just what I've heard. Next question from Surveillance, friend of Dorney Park as well. Taylor, did you have your hand up?
I did. I don't know why I raised my hand instead of the computer hand. Yeah. It's the archaicness. Are we not answering questions too that apply to everyone, or I'm just?
Oh, we could. We could.
I just wanted to know. I wasn't sure.
Well, Larry's never been to Dorney, so he
Oh,
can't really
that's
answer. What
Yeah, that's gonna
Larry, what do
have
you
to
think you would
change.
just never ride again? Or no,
to
that's
be
not what I
fair,
meant.
to be
No,
fair,
I'm
Ryan,
I'm going this year.
He tried to go out for Haunt, for the Haunt invite that you sent out last year, but me and Larry just could not make it.
That's all right.
Yeah,
you'll be here this year. I have faith. I'd rather have you here this year than last year anyway, to be honest.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome with the.
Well, it's like seeing us on our wedding day rather than at like the dress rehearsal. So.
Speaking of, my wedding day is May 4th, and you just had to go put pass holder preview and media day right around my wedding.
Text me later.
How inconsiderate.
Text me later.
Okay.
I'll fill you in.
Cool. Taylor, what would you ride at Dorney for the entire season?
So despite my cat being named Talon, I'm going with Thunderhawk.
That makes sense.
Or the whip.
Well, both sound like great options to me. So I'm surprised no one said. I'm surprised you wouldn't do Steel Force. Yeah. Nobody.
I'm gonna pick Steel Force, and it's not for a reason you might expect.
Okay.
I need to gaslight myself because I've never gotten like a peak ride on Steel Force. I really enjoy Steel Force, but I need to ride it over and over and over until I have Stockholm Syndrome, because I acknowledge it deserves more love than I've ever given it.
Well, you might
ride it over and over and over.
Make sure you get on it this year, Josh. So we are putting in a expensive new control system for Steel Force.
Ooh. Oh, cool.
That we think is going to, and there are some other bells and whistles with that. I haven't had a lot of time to fully invest in it, but basically taking it from a computer system from the 1990s and updating it to a modern one. So I think the last one they did it with was Mamba. So
I was about to say, are you telling me they might turn off the
way
trims?
Mamba runs? And I was at Worlds of Fun twice last year. I didn't get a chance to ride it, but everything I've heard is that everybody loves it. So we're hoping to have a similar effect here by making some of these changes. So you'll see some changes in the station. There's and we did the pneumatic gates last year. So dynamically, we're just trying to update a lot of these older rides, and it was just Steel Force's time to shine. So I think that might change it too. I'll be honest with you. Like, I rode it at the end of last season, and I felt like something was a little bit off. So just talking with our maintenance team, I think there's pretty wide agreement that the control system was contributing to some of the challenges. So,
that's really cool, actually.
I'm sure there's other things. I mean, the ride is, it was put here in 1997 and opened in 1998. So there are a lot of things I'm sure we could work on. So it's just kind of progressively each year. It's like your car. You just look at it and you say, what can I improve? What can I change and make better? And you use whatever funds you have, and you try to crack. It's like we have a ton of rides, so you just try to chip a little bit of each one and see which ones you can make better year in and year out. I mean, like my first year here, 2022, it's like we spent a lot of money on the whip, and no one probably even notices. So that's the other thing, because when you put it back in, you want it to have like a weathered antique look. So the whole roof basically was built in a way that, like, it was built small, and then they expanded the ride and the ride queue to be all under the roof. Well, rather than like just redoing the roof, someone at some point, and this was, I mean, we're talking 30 years ago or whatever, had the brilliant idea to just like build like a second roof with like an overlay. Well, then of course that was getting water all down into it, so that thing started to fall apart, and then structurally created some other issues. So like we had to basically redo the whole building. But it's like, you wouldn't, I mean, if you weren't here, I don't even know if you were here once a year if you would have noticed something like that. We noticed because we have to see it every day. But and that's, any type of work like that is not it's not cheap. But you get that with a lot of the older rides, Like we put money in a Demon Drop every year. But we think it's important. Same thing with Possessed. I mean, it's like everybody complains about the holding brake all the time, but it's like the priority when I got here in 22 was just like just to keep the thing running. And then obviously stuff from Wicked Twister has helped that. And I know Jess has talked about looking into it and seeing what it'll take. And I know she's kind of had a directive for the maintenance team. So, if we get in a position where we feel like the ride's running consistently and it's doing well, then it's like, we will look at things like the holding brake, right? So I think our priorities have always been to maintain the rides, but you know, you don't always have a huge pot to work with for that kind of stuff, because dynamically
Sure.
you're looking at other things like marketing and capital and maintaining the old rides. You've got enough to make sure everything's running, and if you have more left over, it's like you take a crack at one ride, take like a really big swing in it. This year it's Steel Force, and the next year, you know, we'll revisit and look at other stuff too. So. And that's the same thing. I mean, it comes from the same pot. Like people are always like repaint Hydra, and it's like, yeah, we'd love to repaint Hydra, but we're doing the control system and all these changes for Steel Force. So, and we're doing a major capital investment with a brand new roller coaster. So it's like, yeah, it might not get repainted right now.
You're telling me the park doesn't have an infinite money glitch?
It's funny. People, what's that?
So you're telling me the park doesn't have an infinite money glitch?
I wish we just had a bucket of money and just. But we,
Yeah.
we are not the Monopoly guy.
Speaking of repainting and Demon Drop, I don't know if you can see it, but my phone background is 2022 Demon Drop.
Solid.
And I walked into the park this year. I was like, oh, it's a different color now. Like it got a darker paint, like because it was sun faded before. And even that, I'm like, that really shows how much you guys care. A lot of other parks, I'm not going to throw shade at any other park because I do love all parks, but a lot of other parks will have those older attractions and either let them, you know, rot away and then they'll close them, or they won't paint them and it'll look like the day it came, like, you know, it got installed and it never got painted since. But even walking in and seeing a simple coat of paint on what I would call an ancient ride at this point, as much as I love it, I was like genuinely impressed that you guys took the time to paint it.
Yeah, I mean, that's I think a lot of that goes to our maintenance team too, the pride they take in the rides. And a lot of the guys have a kind of a connection with Demon Drop because they're the ones that, you know, raised their hands and said we'll take it when they were looking for a spot for it, when, you know, other places that they attempted wouldn't or couldn't. And then they've been the ones that have maintained it for all these years. And I think they feel that way. I mean, a lot of the guys in our maintenance department have been here for 20, 30 years. So some of these old timers that, you know, it's like I helped build Steel Force and I've been here ever since. Like there's a level of pride there. And I think that all helps with aesthetics and all that stuff.
Nice. Question from Surveillance. Yes. Obviously you've met Surveillance. You know who he is.
Yes, I have. Never seen his face.
I have.
That
would make sense.
On Twitter,
oh, have you?
Cover his face. Yeah,
he does.
On Twitter, though, they always cover his face.
Yeah, they do. Yeah,
their thing.
This is in reference to Groundhog Day being this past week. Did Elfundo and Morgan see their shadows?
Somebody asked me that. We were more inclined to be like, you know, the groundhog himself came by because we're so close to Punxsutawney.
Yeah,
but. Alfondo's house did not see its shadow because it's been so nasty and overcast here until about this week. So did not. So I think that also means early spring. So that's a good thing.
Very cool.
And to be honest with you, I haven't talked to Morgan in quite some time. So Morgan's got to get out a little bit more.
Great answer, actually.
Hey,
Question
thanks.
from Mitchell. So how does the park music work in the park?
So that's actually handled by our entertainment team sets up the playlist for the year, and they have different variety of options from, you know, vendors they use and things like that. And then the maintenance team is responsible for like making sure that the music gets played and making sure that like announcements run when they're supposed to run. So there's kind of a collaborative environment there between those two parks. I have no say. I will say I feel like every year when I'm out in the park, man, Enrique Iglesias comes on, and it could be any one of the 30 hit songs. But I kid you not, if I'm out in the park, there's a good chance that in whatever period of time out there, I will hear Enrique Iglesias, and I literally cannot. And there was a time too. I think my first season, I thought it was Coldplay every time I went out. But last season, I was like, Enrique's on every time I'm out here. What is going on?
That happens to me too when I go to Kings Island. There's like always like a song every year. That
it's Shut Up and Dance. Last year it was, or this past season it was Shut Up and Dance.
It was.
And the year before that it was Mr. Brightside for me at Kings Island. Which Mr. Brightside's a banger. So
every time I'm around Beast, it's like a Taylor Swift folk version. I don't understand why.
I don't know. The Rivertown music is always so interesting to me because it's those bluegrass covers of pop songs.
But have you had to listen to the Wonderwall bluegrass?
Yes.
No, I've not. I think it was last episode or 2 episodes ago, I referenced Relient K as my favorite band. There's a cover in Rivertown of a Relient K song, and the Relient K song is about asking a girl to a Sadie Hawkins dance. So it's like finger plicking, like Sadie Hawkins dance. It's so
yes,
yeah.
yes, I've heard that one.
Yeah, it's particularly interesting.
Yeah, we lean more towards like pop hits, to be honest with you, because that's more our market. That's just what people listen to around here. So you're not going to go. I mean, typically, I honestly can't identify like where I've walked through the park and heard like a country music banger or something. Like it's typically pop. It's typically pop hits of like the last 20 years. You'll get a good NSYNC bump every once in a while. You're like, what the. Nice. I always laugh because I'm like, it's like all those videos you see of like millennials at the grocery store. Or like they show them in like the senior home, and 40 years from now, and they're like, "This is my jam right here." And it's like Backstreet Boys or something. It's like or Usher. You're like, oh no, we're at that age.
Yeah, I wasn't ready.
One of my buddies, I'm like, yo, you know how you're old? And he was like, no, what? I was like, that the fact that Usher is the headliner at halftime, and everybody's excited about it. When you know the people who are excited about it, millennials.
That reminds me of a tweet I saw the other day, and it was, guys, what's your favorite retro game? And it had a screenshot on Google where it said retro games are 15 years or older, and it was like Super Mario Galaxy, Call of Duty Black Ops, like all these games that are becoming retro from when I was younger. And I'm like, that doesn't
Super
feel
Mario
good.
Galaxy, boy.
Yeah,
I still identify retro as like Super Nintendo is like
me too.
I mean,
I
even see Nintendo as retro because when I was a kid, it's like you could still get access to one, and you'd be like, oh, this is kind of dope to play it. Like, I mean, you had a Super Nintendo, but I'm like, or 60. I mean, 64 I think could be applicable too as like retro for me. But
it's retro now. Yeah, it's retro.
Yeah, I had a hand-me-down Sega Genesis before I had like a Wii, so like that's what I consider retro, is that SNES Sega Genesis era.
Yeah. That's usually mine. And I still love playing. I still have my SNES, but now with the Switch, it's like you don't even need it. But
yeah. Well, you can pay $60 a year to have access to games that you already have on your SNES.
Hey, guess what?
And not even the best ones.
I do it on and off. Like I'll get a hankering,
I have them both,
and then I'll
so I just is like if I really dying to play
$60 a year is that bad? It seems fine, so I do it.
No, but they put like 7 games.
I wonder why.
Yeah,
7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next question. I'm actually going to expand on this a tiny bit. The original question from Quentin Bear Major is, any plans to introduce a Winterfest style event in the future? I'm going to add one to that and say, or maybe a winter chill out style event.
Yeah, funny. So we are working on a winter chill out for this year. It's all coming together. Yeah, it's coming together pretty late, but we're actually targeting March 16th as a day.
Is that perhaps what your February 27th announcement's about?
No, I'm going to come out earlier on that. I wanted to come out this week, and then I got really sick. So it might be really early next week, but we have an agreement with a local charity who we're going to raise funds for. I guess the only thing that stinks a little bit is that with the construction where it's at, because we wanted to do this earlier, but getting everybody set, and this is the first time we've done anything like this, but I've been really adamant. Talked to actually Tony Clark a good bit on how we can execute. I don't think we're going to have like a large attendance in terms like we won't be able to handle it that day with the amount of vehicles we need to move in the park and the things that we'll be doing at that point. We could even be commissioning the ride. So it does create some hurdles, but we're still going to create a really great experience for the folks who can come. So as soon as we button up one or two last things, I think some of it is just ticketing, then we're gonna come out with that. So that's gonna happen this year. As far as a Winterfest, I think. Thank you. As far as a Winterfest, I think you would have seen that already, if we hadn't gone the way of theming an entire area and getting a roller coaster.
That's fair.
We have talked about it a lot, and I know that there are a lot of people who really want that done. So I think it'll happen as soon as possible.
I'm actually really, like, I looked at my calendar March 16th. Like, I'm really excited for that. I don't know if I'll be able to make it, but I'm going to try.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
It sounds, yeah.
Question from Wind. What one area do you think Dorney really excels in, and what area would you like to see a little improvement?
I think we excel in some of those things we talked about, which is kind of seeing the business dynamically, kind of seeing where we're at in the business, taking care of and protecting some of those historical assets and making sure that they still contribute to the overall experience. Dynamically pivoting into theming, I think, is something we're doing really, really well. One of the things I mean, if you had asked me 2 years ago, that's what I would have said we needed to do, was to pivot and get more into kind of dynamic thieving and like get a new ride that people want to come and experience. But I think our next goal, which isn't necessarily this year's goal, because I think we're accomplishing a lot of things that I would have said we needed to do. But I think let's get through this year. I think we're in a great position to do that. But I think our goal moving forward now. Maybe two of the goals that we'll have is dynamically changing kind of the family rides aspect, maybe adding a dynamic family ride, and then doing more with the water park, changing the water park, modernizing the water park, and potentially adding like a really thrilling water ride or water experience. So I think those are the two things that we need to do. There has been a lot of investment in the water park, but I think infrastructure wise, there are definitely things that we can change to make the experience better for the guests, and I think that's something that I think we need to do. I would say too, with the dry park, there's just not a lot of great dining options at the bottom. And if you had mentioned that, we're working on that, right? So that's also a part of this project. So I think it'll be great to see how this year goes, and then some of the changes dynamically that we have set. I would say that those were probably some of the things we're doing this year. I think address a lot of the things that I would have said last year as like, this is a problem. But we got to work on the parking situation too, and we've got plans for that this year. Because I would say honestly, it's probably my number one thing. It causes me headaches and nightmares. So
Taylor loves your parking.
Every time I pull into the parking lot, I text Josh with having a freak out because I can't figure out how to get to the handicap parking, and I get so turned around.
What's up with the cones? That's what I want to know.
That's what confuses me, is I always think that the handicap is blocked off, and then I get turned around.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well,
every time.
Seeing where it is, it's like if we don't put the cones there, then everybody acts like it's a free for all, and they can just do whatever they want to do. And then you put the cones out there, and people get confused. So there's got to be a happy medium somewhere. But we have kind of changed how we're doing traffic and parking this year, and we're giving that to the admissions team, and just kind of changing the oversight. Like security will still be involved, but we'll be able to staff it better, and we'll be able to monitor it a lot easier, because security's got so much other stuff to worry about. But the last thing that they should be spending all their time worrying about is like parking cars and making sure people are getting in. So we're going to utilize our admissions staff, and Yolanda, who runs our admissions, like super capable. And I think that's going to dynamically just change how we park cars on days where we're really busy. We've got plans for a potential second gate to get people in, to reduce the walks and make things a little bit easier. So like this year, it's another thing we're tackling, right? So I think a lot of the things that we saw as challenges, Jessica easily identified. She's been doing this a lot longer than I have. And I think just leaning on her team and trusting the insight that we have, I think we're in a really good position this year to just dynamically change a lot of the things that have been frustrating. And like I said, adding a new dining option that's like different and unique and fun and enjoyable, like that's all tied into the steel yard. So there's some things coming. It'll be exciting.
Question about new dining option.
Yes.
When I interviewed Tony Clark for Boardwalk, I asked specifically about the Grand Pavilion and like what their approach to that dining option was. And he mentioned that high capacity dining was something that they were really focusing on. Is that like something that you guys, when you're looking at the I think you called it the Steel Yard restaurant, like, are you going for something high capacity, like where it's designed to churn through people, or were you looking for more of like a grab and go style, or what was the thought process there?
So the new restaurant in the area will be set up with kind of like two unique ways. So there's like a crew serve, and then we also have like basically set up for like a takeout window. So there'll be kind of like two different ways to enjoy the same dining with different experiences, whether you want to grab and go or you want to like sit and chill. So we're also setting up like a outdoor seating area. So like you want to hang out. It's one thing we hear a lot too is like we need more seating. So we're working on that this year too, which I think is definitely a fair criticism. And we're working on that. So we're trying to put in a lot of dynamic areas for folks to sit and relax down on, specifically in that area. Another thing too is just like give people an opportunity to enjoy the creek. Like the creek's so nice, and like right now we've just got it like all bogged up with junk, and so we're working on that for this year too. So yeah, that to answer your question, the new dining will give them, I think, both options. Either if they want to hang out, crew serve, or they want to grab it real fast and pop out of there. They can do both.
Can you tease what genre of food it's gonna be?
Genre of food.
Honestly, I think
Cuisine?
that like, yeah, I've heard some things. I would hate to speak on it because I know. Our chef and some other folks are diligently working on what they want to do. I think they had their first tasting, a week or two ago. They're working with some of the folks at the corporate level too to kind of identify what they want to do. So I can't say with 100% certainty what exactly it's going to be. And, these things always, the food stuff tends to pivot a little bit as we kind of get closer. So, I mean, I think the overall vibe is like you want to do meat. You want to serve some kind of meat and, things that are fresh, like, a salad or something like that. So, but I haven't no one's actually handed me a menu yet. So I would be speaking out of turn. I'm not 100% sure yet.
To be determined.
I think that sounds good. I think
they probably,
I would have honestly
beverage, but I haven't had that conversation yet.
I would have put my money on barbecue because that seems to be the Cedar Fair tradition. Not that there's anything wrong with barbecue. I love good barbecue.
Yeah.
So I was kind of expecting meat, but I'm just excited for a new life in that plaza, to be honest. Possessed was always kind of awkwardly over there, obviously since Stinger has been removed. It's just been there, and it's kind of like a dead end with Possessed shop over there. So I'm really excited to see how that turns out. The last time I was there was obviously during Haunt. Ghost of the Machine was over there, and then there was a bunch of construction walls. So I'm going to be going in to I haven't seen over because I didn't get to stay for the construction tour because I had to run that day. So I haven't seen an open plot of land back there in a while. I'm excited.
Yeah, it dynamically. It honestly, and having new steel in the park like this, just I'm walking around and I'm like, dude, we feel like this feels like a Carowinds thing or something, or like Cedar Point. We're so not used to having new steel. It's like our park just always kind of feels like it's trapped in the year, like 2008. Like it's 2008 every day. So it's so wild seeing all this new stuff go up. And then I'm looking over at Possessed the other day, and I'm like, oh boy, oh buddy, you just need a full retheme and a paint job now that this thing's here. So,
just don't tear it down. Chris will riot.
No, that was actually, I think I mentioned that to Chris when I talked to him. The part of the reason we picked the design or the direction of the ride or whatever was because B&M submitted a couple different design plans and most of them had them ripping out Possessed. Jessica was adamant that it was good hardware and she didn't want to get rid of it. So that's part of the reason why we, and I don't know, I think probably when they had some initial conversations, maybe 1 or 2 years ago, the ride was a struggle. 2022, the ride did not run well. It was closed for half the season. So, I'm sure it was hey, give us a couple different options and we'll see where we're at by the time we get there. And by the time we got there, it's it's running fine. Don't get rid of it. So that's good.
Thank you for your sacrifice, Wicked Twister.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
So, Possessed still staying. Is that probably a big reason why you didn't pursue the Gravity Group shuttle coaster anymore, because that would have had to take out Possessed as well?
So the easiest explanation for why we didn't go with that ride was because we had a change in leadership and dynamically decided to pivot more towards theming. And Jessica felt that if we were going to move toward theming, the easiest, honestly, it's such a slam dunk to move with the Valley, which is really, really kind of embrace this whole we are steel or we were steel and we're proud of that history. It's you got the Iron Pigs, the baseball team does it, the Steel Stacks do it, the casino does, everybody's doing it, and I think it's smart. So it's if we're going to move in that direction and theme like that, why in the world would we why would we not put in something that was steel? Which I think led to the conversation shifting. And then it's like, obviously you outreach to manufacturers and say like, send me your best plans. And when B&M, I think it was a wing and a dive. But when they sent the dive, we were talking to Ken is with Cedar Fair. And then, we have historians in the area, and it's like, dude, the dive looks like you're dumping iron ore, into the mill. So that kind of like played into like when you guys saw that, the kind of cinematic trailer, it's like the whole act of dumping the iron ore into the blast furnace was kind of like the vibe we wanted to get. And it's like nobody in the Northeast has it. That is a big thing in the industry, is that it's our baby. And we at Dorney have a great relationship with B&M, and that made it really easy too. It was like, dude, we have a great relationship with these guys. They always hit deadline. They're transparent. They work hard. They have a good team. And so, that's our experience with, and that was our maintenance director too. Paul has a big say in this, but he worked with them on Hydra and Talon, and I think has always been impressed. So I think that's just kind of why it all worked out.
Nice. I got a lot of respect for B&M after seeing how quickly they got Fury up and running this year. You figure with a major support crack like that, it's going to be down possibly the rest of the season. It was like a month, or like it was fast.
There were a lot of people were overreacting. They're like, "That's it. Fury's gone. Fury's getting ripped down."
People love to say things are going to get ripped out if you haven't figured.
Can you imagine if they actually ripped out Fury? Come on.
No. Question from Ibby. I don't know if I'm saying that right. EB. There we go. I knew you knew them, so I wanted to make sure I got that right. Is there any plans for Lift Hill tours on Iron Menace similar to the VIP Sunrise tours on Valraven and other B&M dives?
We're talking about some things. We don't. I don't have anything concrete. I think there's a good opportunity here. So I'm a big charity guy, and I would literally probably give away my house if someone didn't tie me down. But I think there's a really good opportunity to try to fundraise with something like that. And I think, when we talk about doing this, that's probably what it's going to be for. Is like, how do we dynamically fundraise for, is it the Eagles Autism Foundation? Is it the, Riley Children's Hospital here from Lehigh Valley Health Network? I mean, Camelot for Children, who we work with really closely. Like, are we doing it for a charitable partner? I think the answer is yes. So certainly as those opportunities arise, then, we'll message it out and let people know. But we've had discussions about it. I'm not sure. The one challenge with Menace is that it'll be unlike any of our roller coasters in that you will have to be harnessed in to walk up it or come down it. It is a steep lift. And it's, it's probably not really narrow, but when you're going up there, I went up there a couple weeks ago. When you're going up there, it feels narrow. And the stairs, you kind of feel like you've got to lip up and lip out. So it'll be interesting, but I think there'll be some opportunities. I don't think it's going to be like you. I don't think it's going to be like you call up Ryan and we go and do it. That a lift hill walk. That's not going to be a thing for this ride, because it's going to be such a pain and such a lift for operations, especially in the first season where we're trying to get that ride running as much as humanly possible. Which means that we're getting maintenance to turn it over as early as possible, which means that ops got to turn it over as early as possible. So like the last thing I want to do is impede them or get in the way unless I've got a really good reason to do it, at least in the first season. Now, next year, things could change, but I think for this year, it's going to be like, if we're doing it for, like I said, for me, it would be a charitable cause. I'm sure somebody else in the park might have a different view of it, but that's
Jason Kelsey shows up.
Right. If Jason Kelsey's here, there's a good chance we're probably raising awareness or funds for charity.
I'm sure.
Yeah. That's good. That's cool. I know a lot of people like to complain about parks being money hungry. So hearing you say that, like, you want to do it, but for charity, I think that'll go a long way for a lot of people.
Yeah. Like I'm not selling a package. So I mean, unless somebody else tells me otherwise, that is not my goal.
Nice. Question from Execution Man. I got it right this time.
Nice.
Possessed or Talon? I think you covered that pretty well.
Talon. Yep.
Talon for me. Closer than I thought they'd be.
I was gonna say I wouldn't say it's a landslide, but it's Talon.
Possessed actually got me really excited for Top Thrill 2, like facing right down at the ground there.
I can see that.
Orion Fan 27 asks, planning on keeping Possessed Indoor Demon Drop around for a long time?
Yep, that's the plan. We've put a significant amount of money into them over the last 2 or 3 years. So that is the plan, is always to keep our. I think the other thing is people look at like what parks do is like a vacuum, like that we all make very similar decisions. And I can tell you that like at Dorney, we're pretty damn stubborn. So like we don't just like put our cows out to pasture. So like we'll fight for every single ride we have at the park, and we'll fix it as long as we can. And once it's like reached its usable life and there's no way to save it, then we'll cut bait. But you could be at the park, you could see that we try not to. So
that's awesome. That's I just have to. That was my bad. That's Orion 287. Sorry about that.
Orion Fan 287.
Orion Fan 287.
Got it.
Oh, I thought it was weird that it was 27. But...
Maybe they're 27 years old. Maybe they were born in 1927.
That's kind of what.
And they love Orion.
Maybe the number's 27. You never know.
Yeah. Last question here from viewers is from Jared /Pablo Scooby. He wants to know if you had said at some point that you were planning on opening earlier, like other parks in the area, like Hershey open a bit earlier than you guys, and you open a little later than other parks in the chain. So is that like something you decide, or something Cedar Fair decides, and is that something that's been discussed?
So I have like no say on this, other than I can just like, be this little voice in everybody's ear who's like, we should be open earlier, which is what I've been saying, and we should be open later, because when you're trying to sell season passes and it's like, here's my calendar and here's Hershey's,
right,
anybody else's, then it for me it's like, oh, we got to do something. So I think for us this year, the big key is, as soon as Iron Menace is ready to go, we're going to try to get open. So whether that's for season pass holder previews or dynamic charity events, like whatever it is, when that ride's ready to go and they give us a green light, Jessica and I and our corporate partners have pretty aggressive plans to like get the park open. And if that's earlier than May 10th, that would be fantastic. So yeah, there's plans for this year. I think, maybe we would have committed to a calendar sooner if we would know exactly when the ride was going to open. But it just seems like, why are you going to ram the park open if the ride's not even ready? It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So we might as well just wait and be patient at this point. And we can see the patterns too. Like, yeah, all these parks open early, but it's really, really, actually, I think people would be like money. But it's really hard to get labor earlier in the season, because a lot of our labor is seasonal labor, and a lot of them are, either part of like an exchange program, or they have a J1 visa, or they're high school students or college students. And so like trying to get them in April is somewhat of a challenge. So, that's some of the dynamics that we deal with too, being more of a traditional seasonal park and a community park, We're not like some kind of massive tourist draw. We know that. So that's another, we're not Cedar Point. We're not Dollywood. So we've got to keep that in mind too. When everybody's putting pressure on us to like do this and do that and do this and do that. And it's like, yeah, but we're not that park. Right. And I think some parks are making that decision, and the nature of the business is very cyclical. Where like they'll do this. I've seen this pattern. Like it happened in the early 2000s, where a lot of the parks decided to add winter events and do all this stuff, and then they had to roll it back, and now they've added it again. So it's also like, are you going just like with the flow of the business, or are you making the right decision for yourselves? So we'll make the right decision for us when we feel like it's the right decision.
Good for you. I have to tell you, I appreciate how forthcoming you are. With questions.
I agree with that.
A lot of people in this industry are cagey, even
refreshing.
on both sides. It is very refreshing to be able to ask you a question and know that you're going to answer it to the best of your ability.
Yeah, man. I'm not a BSer, so I never have been. It's just gonna give it to you straight. I mean, there's some things like I'll eat it it's just because it's like I'm not sure I can tell you about it yet, because I'm still working on something.
Yeah.
I heard about the investor meeting too, but I don't know how much I know about it. You know what I mean? So.
Well, that's the last viewer submitted question. I have a fun, quick little game here for us.
All right.
So I'm gonna poorly describe a coaster,
Okay.
and I have two of them for each of you. I've picked who's getting which coaster. I'm going to poorly describe one, and we're going to see if you can all get two coasters out of two. So, Ryan, you're going to go first. Admittedly, throwing you a softball here. The inverted coaster that true daddies love.
That's Talon. Talon, 100%.
That's Talon, Dorney Park.
At Dorney Park.
Yeah.
Talon at Dorney Park. That's
Taylor, Taylor doesn't get a softball here.
No, of course I don't. Why would I?
This is the love child of Nikola Tesla and McLovin. From El Toro Ryan, of course, our friend.
The love child of Tesla and McLovin.
Nikola Tesla and McLovin. I bet he knows this. I'm going to get a text about this when this episode goes live from McLovin.
I have no idea, but I feel like it's going to be some kind of European coaster.
Yeah, me too.
Knowing McLovin. Unless it's, what's that one that he really likes? It's on the tip of my tongue. The one that he really likes.
That one.
It's on the tip of my tongue, and you're going to say it, and then I'm going to be like, that's the one I meant. And yeah, Josh.
This coaster is Voltron.
Wait. Oh, okay.
The new coaster coming to Europa Park.
I knew it was going to be European.
Yes. Larry.
Yes.
People act like 10 seconds shorter than a similar coaster in the same state makes a massive difference.
Okay. Well, I feel like this is about Millennium Force and Orion, but I'm not sure.
This is Orion.
Yeah, okay.
See, if you gave me that one, I would have got it.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I crafted these ones specifically for each of you. Back to Ryan. Okay, follow me here. Yeah. 0, 74, nobody knows. 100, nobody knows. 120, 420, 0. That's your clue.
Top Thrill 2?
That's Top Thrill 2. Well done. Was it the 420 that gave it away?
420 gave it away, but you had a couple in there where I was like, the nobody knows kind of gave it away too.
Okay.
See, I didn't get that part. I didn't get that part.
420 is a dead giveaway though.
Yeah, that's how I got it too.
I was considering not putting that in there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I might have still got it, but 420 is a dead giveaway.
Taylor, Larry's gonna know this one instantly. My clue for this is Larry's wallet was the problem.
Larry's wallet was the problem. Storm Runner, right?
Ooh, Pantheon.
Pantheon.
For context, Ryan, Larry is obviously a larger rider,
right?
And he tried to ride Pantheon at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and he couldn't verify. So he took his wallet out of his back pocket and he verified.
Yeah.
Oh my
True
God.
Story.
Wow. That made you feel good.
I mean, I was glad to get on the ride for sure.
Yeah. Well, there's larger seats on Iron Menace for you, Larry, if you need it.
Is there red belts?
There are red belts.
Is there one like front row, middle row, back row, like on other B&Ms?
There's one on every row.
Cool.
I don't know if it's the same on every train, but the one I saw was like every seat right in the middle was the larger seat. Okay. I don't think it's like that on both trains though. There's 2 trains, at least for now. So I think the other one it's more like, but I don't think there's one on the end. So, but they're there, which is good.
That is good. On dives. I can fit into non-red belts, but red belts are just so much more comfortable for me.
Well, I think always crazy too when people talk about like larger riders is like they just assume that like it's it's like, oh, you need to lose weight, and I'm like, dude, if you look at like anybody who is like plays for the Philadelphia Eagles, right? There's a lot of guys that can't fit on our rides because they're just big people. There's big people too. There's right like some people are just big, so I think I hate seeing that too when they like get up and they can't fit. It's like, oh,
I had to walk of shame for him last year.
Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, I think there's some stuff too. I've heard, Josh, I don't know if you said this, but like Talon,
yeah,
like with the seat structure. I don't know, Jessica was talking about doing something like that. I need to regroup with them, but yeah, we're always looking at that kind of stuff too, like just accessibility in general. When people think accessibility, I think they think of like disability. But it just means like making access for everyone, right? Or making
Sure.
access
Yeah.
easier when you can. I mean, certainly there are things that, probably none of us can control that would deter you from getting on a ride. But, when we can make it possible, we like to make it possible. I think Iron Menace has like a height restriction of 6'8". So like, yeah, there's going to be people who maybe come out.
That's still pretty big.
Yeah, but I mean, they might come out and be excited and not be able to ride. And
true. I've seen that at
which actually gives me a good reminder. I should probably put this. Well, I guess we have to run it too to be certain of the specs. But once we know what the specs are, that's important to get out too, especially minimum height, because people in this industry, because it's a industry driven by children and teenagers, like really, a difference between 48 inches or 52 inches is huge. Even though it's only 4, though it's only 4 inches, it's huge. So that stuff's good to know in advance of your trip.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Yep.
Larry, I have one more coaster for you to poorly guess.
Okay, let's do it.
GCI's most recent charity case.
The charity case. GCI's most recent charity case. Is it? I can't remember the name of this ride. Is it the coaster at not Dorney? Your park, your home park.
It is.
Yeah, what is that called?
Predator.
I know this one.
Predator.
Because GCI gave Darien Lake free Titan track.
Oh.
There we go. Looks like Ryan got 2,
Yeah.
Taylor got 0, and Larry got 2. So
I mean, you didn't give Taylor talent and top thrill, so we'll give her a pass.
That's true. That's true.
You intentionally made ones you knew I probably wasn't going to get.
To be fair, Taylor, to be fair, when I made yours, when I made yours, Taylor, we have mentioned both of those on this podcast before.
We mentioned a lot of things.
But in terms of, we've told the story of Larry's wallet, and we've told about how McLovin is dying to get on Voltron at Europa.
I knew it was going to be European.
Anyway, we're going to end this podcast the same way we end every podcast, which is a random question from the host to the other hosts. So, Taylor first. If you could add one accessibility feature to every park across the world instantly by snapping your fingers overnight, what would you add?
A separate lane for the ADA instead of going up the exit. Drives me insane. Tired of being knocked downstairs.
It's a good answer.
That's my final answer.
That's very definitive.
Especially on Seal Vengeance. Seal Vengeance is where it's the worst for me. People do not like disabled people on that ride. They get very upsetty, and I understand, but...
Upsetty?
I was going to say upsetty spaghetti, and I stopped halfway through. I'm sorry.
You should have just gone. It was already too late.
Larry.
Guys.
Yes, sir.
If you had to snap your fingers and wipe every coaster from the big 3 manufacturers off the face of the planet, those being Intamin, B&M, and RMC, which manufacturer are you making their coasters disappear overnight?
This is a cruel question.
I was just cruel to Taylor. I have to be cruel to you now.
I don't want any of those to disappear. I mean...
You should say Intamin just to piss off Chris.
That's funny.
Oh, man. I don't know. I think I might have to do RMC. I'm sorry, RMC. I love RMCs, but...
To be fair, you're getting rid of the least, so that's probably...
Yeah, it's just... I mean, I love RMCs, but I can re-ride the other ones easier.
Fair. Ryan, I actually have 2 questions for you.
Yes.
First, the most serious question I can ask a Pennsylvanian, Sheets or Wawa?
I'm a Wawa guy.
Okay.
I'm a huge coffee connoisseur. Coffee is life. Sheets coffee is trash.
Disgusting.
No offense, Sheets, but your coffee, guys, you gotta work on your game. And Wawa's coffee is just consistent. It may not be the best coffee in the world, but it's consistent. And then I also prefer their sandwiches just feel more fresh. And I'm just a fresh hoagie cup of coffee kind of guy. And they nail it. So
I try to head down to a Wawa region every Thanksgiving to grab a gobbler.
A gobbler.
What is a gobbler?
I bet it's turkey, stuffing, and cranberry sauce.
And gravy.
Oh.
And legitimately, I cannot breathe after I eat it for a solid 20 minutes because it's the thickest hoagie you'll ever have in your life. But it's so worth it.
It's good.
Good stuff.
And my second question for you, Ryan. So you have something on the 27th. You got any little teases for that? I have to try.
Yeah. How about here? I'll give you a little nugget. So there will be 2 unique things new to Dorney Park announced on February 27th.
Very cool.
Interesting.
Cool.
2 new things.
That's cool. 2 new things.
2 things for 2024. And surprisingly, neither of them are related to Iron Menace. So there's another nugget. There will be plenty more announcements.
Looking forward to hearing more. Yeah.
This isn't the only announcement we're going to have either. So there's going to be a lot of like, hey, watch the date. I like to do that. I'm kind of like one of those strategic people. I like to build up the excitement for things, and then when it comes out, I mean, either people are like, "Darn, I thought it was going to be this," or they're like, "But you still have the engagement, right? Like you still get to engage with the public and your audience." That's why I like doing that kind of stuff. So that's why I did it with Ghost in the Machine and Iron Menace, and now that I realize how much I love it, like it's probably going to be with as much as humanly possible. No, I'm not going to do it for to announce the control system for Steel Force. Like that is not a part of the announcement. That's just going to be that'll just be like a separate social media post one day. But it's all stuff that I think it's always going to be stuff that I think is like exciting for the park or changes or new, right? So 2 new things for 2024.
Oh no.
User is experiencing some connection issues.
Oh no.
But recording is being saved locally. Shouldn't be a problem. Well. Ryan, thanks for coming out.
Thanks, Ryan.
We appreciate you.
Oh, are you back? Oh, he's gone.
He's gone.
Well, give it a second. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, Orion's a giga.
Peace.
Go on down out. Oh, that's funny.
Hey, at least it was right at the very end.
That's funny.